The Learning Journey, in association with Turn It Up Tuesday and hosted by Ross Audio, presents Did You Know? For our disclaimer, the information sourced here is based on the cross-examination of relevant literature and sources. Various terms are used in this presentation. Do not be offended by them. They are just used to set the context. Let us begin. Jamaica is said to be one of the most religious places in the world. Many have suggested that Jamaica has the most churches per square mile. And of course, these churches include the Baptist, Moravian, Presbyterian, Anglican, Pentecostal, and others. This story is about one preacher who knew how to persuade and how to lead his people. The late Louise Bennett even made a lyrical piece for this man. Here is a sample of her lyrics. Dip them Bedward, dip them in the healing stream. Dip them sweet but not too deep. Dip them to cure bad feelings. She goes on to sing. Some come from west like perfect pests, figure in at the healing stream. Some come from east like Lego bees, figure dipping at the healing stream. Yes, this story is about Alexander Bedward, who was labeled a flying preacher. However, it should be known that Alexander Bedward may have been more advanced in thoughts and deeds. You decide. Alexander Bedward, a Jamaican healer, led the Baptist Free Church from its inception in 1884 until his death on November the 8th, 1930. He was an ordinary Jamaican who was a tinsmith and his wife was a baker. However, there are reports that Bedward spent time working on the Panama Canal. He found this experience a traumatizing one. This experience may have changed his life. It is believed that during this time in the Panama Canal, he became politically conscious and gained more awareness of the oppressive systems in the Caribbean. Bedward viewed the Jamaican government during this time as oppressive. On his return to Jamaica, he would produce some of the most powerful messages of hope to the Jamaican people. These messages were unsettling for many whites who believed that Bedward's messages would incite unrest. Many thought that his messages were advocating for an insurrection. The story of Bedward is fascinating. The authorities seem to suggest that Bedward was illiterate, but I believe he was self-educated and he was able to impose his influence on Jamaicans and others across the Caribbean. His followers claimed that he could perform healings and provide spiritual blessings to those around him. For example, people who were unable to walk were healed. He also had the practice of selling water from the Hope River. He claimed that by blessing the water, it would have healing properties. Based on this claim, Bedward was arrested. The case against him was not successful. Bedward was released, and afterwards, the followers of Bedward increased tremendously. Historical documents suggest that Bedward had thousands of followers. He had mass baptismal services that were held by the Hope River, and of course, there were thousands of people. One historian highlighted by the time the service started, all points of the riverbank was already populated by Bedward's followers. Those with a view to see Bedward would see him in his armchair, and he was dressed in white. It is said that Bedward amassed so many followers that his movement could have transformed the political landscape of Jamaica. The reality is that he was a threat to the British-operated government. I am sure that those in charge would have been planning to find a way to limit Bedward's influence. So when Bedward prophesied that there would be an ascension into the skies one Sunday morning, he had attracted the attention of the British authorities. I guess that Sunday morning everyone was dressed up and ready to go into the clouds. After the time had passed, he revised the time, and as time passed, he sat in his chair. Many of his followers could not understand why the ascension had not taken place. With the unsuccessful ascension, It was an opportunity for the destruction of Bedward and his followers. Bedward and some of his followers were arrested as they attempt to march from Augustown to Kingston. In reality, it was an ambush. The authorities used this unfortunate situation to label Bedward as a person of unsound mind. In those days, we call them a madman or a lunatic. Bedward was placed in a mental institution where he would spend the last days of his life. As a child, the only part of the story that I was told was about a lunatic who wanted to fly. At no point was I told that Bedward was fighting for equal rights and justice. At no point was I told that Bedward, a religious leader, had threatened the status quo. At no point was I informed that Bedward was a forerunner for Marcus Garvey and his movement. Yes, he was. He is quoted as saying, "There is a white wall and a black wall. And the white wall has been closing around the black wall, but now the black wall has become bigger than the white wall." The reality is that Bedward was a threat to the colonial state, and any threat must be addressed and suppressed, and that's what the British authorities did. One researcher who was able to track down the followers of Bedward after he had passed stated that Bedward was not insane. It was far from the truth, and the stories that were designed by those whites were there to discredit Bedward. Although many will question Bedward's sanity, I would say that Bedward created a movement for racial awareness and consciousness that soon found connections to Marcus Garvey and his movement. As we remember Bedward as he dipped each person in the healing stream, let's remember he was also dipping them into a stream of consciousness that there would be no need for inequality or injustice in our society. Take a few moments to reflect on Bedward and his movement to make Jamaica and the Caribbean a better place. My question to you is, what will be your final view of Bedward? Is he a person of unsound mind or a lunatic for suggesting that he would ascend into the heavens as recorded in history, or a man with a voice for the oppressed who was later labeled by the oppressors as a man of unsound mind, and the only intention of doing so was to place him in a mental institution or asylum so that he could be no more threat to them and their political powers? Thanks for listening. That's all for now. Over to you, Rossi.